Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Olmstead, and this is for ID 8210 with Dr. Paula Porter. Today, we are going to walk through a needs assessment plan I've created using a real situation from my current organization, but still within the limits of my NDA contract and to protect anonymity. As we get started, let's first make sure we have our prerequisite knowledge needed to understand the process. We're going to quickly summarize the stages of the needs assessment and briefly discuss what they are, and then we will go through each stage and how it relates to our current organizational problem individually. The first stage in the process is the objectives. We want to define measurable objectives that we align upon with the stakeholders and can be used to create success so we know if the goal was achieved. The second stage in the needs assessment plan is all about identifying your desired users. What this means is the target audience that will be affected and who you want to be affected by the outcomes. The instructional designers must analyze, identify, and define this target audience group. The third stage is sampling procedures. It is in this phase that the instructional designer defines how the target audience will be determined and what research methods will be used in order to discover who the target audience is and what their needs are. The fourth stage in the needs assessment is where we define the data collection methods used to gather information on what the target audience's needs and wants are. And in the fifth phase, specifications, the instructional designer will define all processes and tools needed and used in order to conduct the necessary research. And this is by Rothwell et al. 2016, Fauché, Silber, and Westgard 1986. The sixth step of the needs assessment plan is where the instructional designer defines and identifies how data collected will be analyzed and shares the analysis of the information gathered. And in the final seventh stage, this is in the decision process. In this step, the instructional designer identifies and determines the target audience's need based on all of the research and data gathered and analysis conducted of this information. Fauché, Silber, Westgard 1986, and Rothwell et al. 2016. For our purposes, we have also added an additional eighth step where we will justify the educational strategies and outcomes with learning theories used in the instructional design. And lastly, we will also have available the cited works and resources used in research in the needs assessment plan. What is the objective? The problem first came to me in a retrospective with my team following a completion of our sprint. Our team works on 2-week iterative cycles known as sprints. The problem is the work that the development team known as the scripters were doing was being rejected by the technical director and the quality verification team. Feedback was given that it was the performance of the development team that was struggling, and as a result, the work was lacking in quality and the work was not going through the proper review processes. Ultimately, there was quality and performance issue that needed to be resolved to mitigate the cases of this in the future and for more delayed features in the development pipeline. This is using the steps provided in the needs assessment process, Rothwell et al. 2016. So again, what is the objective? In determining the objective, we must determine what the goal of the problem would be. How do we hope to mitigate this, and what would this situation look like if there were no problems and the process was running optimally? Having established the process and the craft leads for each discipline within my team, the goal for this problem I determined to be ensure alignment throughout development, make sure people are aware and aligned on the status of the features they own, improve and streamline the reviewing process. For some reason, the reviewing has fallen short as determined by the problem. Why and what can we do to improve the process and also make it easier to follow if that is what is to be determined as a need for the target users? And lastly, improve quality. Ultimately, this issue was flagged because the quality of a particular feature was not acceptable. How can we mitigate this and make sure we are achieving desired quality? This is using steps provided in the needs assessment process, Rothwell et al. 2016. Now, as instructional designers solving this problem, We must identify who our target audience is for this exact problem. So who will be affected by the results of this assessment, and whose needs are the instruction designers trying to design a solution to this problem? As Rothwell et al. Described, there are performers and decision makers. Performers are the individuals whose instructional needs we are addressing, and the decision makers are those who will support the performers in a vital way to their success. Rothwell et al. 2016. The sampling procedures needed for this case were simple because our organization provides us with a clear org chart that helps identify the individuals who will be affected by our problem, and clear process documentation which identifies which crafts and teams are affected during a stage of workflow. Additionally, roles and responsibility documentation used to identify stakeholders in each situation. This small sampling technique is appropriate because we are looking at a situation-specific needs assessment, which could also be known as a micro needs assessment for the purposes of our case study, Laird 1985. Therefore, the first group of people that were affected were the pod members and the pod lead responsible for the process within the pod and the overall quality and completion of the work the pod undertakes. The second group affected was a development team, also known as the dev team. The dev team was the team who was responsible for the work in question, and it was their leads who originally flagged the issue and a member of their team who was the current employee on the feature. Thirdly, we have the artists and designers who are the creatives on the feature, and the team members who determined and designed the visuals and user-facing quality of the work. And lastly, we have the quality verification team, also known as the QV for short. And this team is responsible for the final stage of quality reviewing and approval before a feature reaches a shippable state. These are the groups of people we have determined to be the target audience. And referencing back to the concept of performers and decision makers, Rothwell et al. 2016, the performers in this audience are the dev team and the artists and designers, and the decision makers are the pod lead and the quality verification team. The next phase in our needs assessment plan is where we define our data collection methods. In other words, this is where we will identify how we will collect all the data necessary for this assessment. These methods will be used to provide us with all necessary information necessary on our target audience's needs in order to achieve our objective. We will also look at any tools and protocols necessary in order to obtain this data. This also includes any software or other tools the team uses to currently handle these types of data collection, and any new tools or protocols that will be necessary for future information gathering. This is known as our specification phase, Rothwell et al. 2016. In order to collect the data necessary, we will conduct interviews with the audience members identified. We have an end of iteration retrospectives over Zoom, which allow us to talk about what went well, what didn't go well, and what we want to improve and suggest. The information collected from pod members during this time is tracked on an Excel spreadsheet, and followed up on one-on-one sessions are held as needed with target audience members. This is the process we will use to collect interview data. Next, we conduct process mapping, where we go step by step through this process and map the process and workflow out using a flowchart whiteboarding tool familiar to the team known as Miro, and stored on a tool where all information for our studio and project is kept, known as Confluence. Since all work status, assignment, cost, and key performer indicators are tracked using a software called Jira, we also have measurable quantitative data in which we can use to determine success. It is important to understand the specifics of a problem, and in order to do that, we must identify the root cause of a problem, I6 Sigma no date. The 5 whys method provides us with a simple technique used to break down an issue to discover the core causes without statistical data and analysis. We keep asking why a problem happens until we find the actual core problem itself, I6 Sigma no date. We know our scripter's work is being continuously rejected. Why is this work being rejected? The quality was not met. Why was the quality not met? The visual layout and overall front end quality was subpar and below the standards required for a product of our caliber. Why was the visual layout subpar? The review with the artists and designers never occurred. Why did the review not occur? They were not included during the feature's kickoff, and therefore were never made aware of its existence or its need for approval or review. Why were they not included in the kickoff? At this point, we found out that both the stakeholders were not identified and the workflow process of when to schedule reviews and identify your stakeholders was not being followed. Why? The onboarding materials that were given to employees on joining the pod were not being read, reviewed, or followed. Now we have our root problem. Now that we have identified the root problem, we are able to understand the needs of our target audience through analysis. The analysis will provide us with clear, actionable items that the instruction designer can use to make decisions on how to best mitigate this and create a solution in our design. We can back these decisions in learning theories. Connectivism is a relatively modern learning theory born from the influence of technology and multimedia on the educational process. Connectivism suggests that students discover gaps in their knowledge and bring resources from a variety of influences together to connect and network and make choices about our learning. Western Governors University 2021. Since we have identified the target audience's need as clear and more accessible onboarding instructional materials, and we have identified the instructional materials existing in a variety of multimedia forms, connectivism plays the largest role in how employees adapt to the processes and workflows involved in the pod and identifying how the pod learns and operates. Here are the resources I referenced throughout this needs assessment plan. And again, I'm Ashley Olmstead, and thank you for listening.